So let's apply what we just learned, right, to a couple of use cases that we've been working on in our assignments, right? In our assignments, we have been implementing quite a few services that use actual repositories and go out to a database. And we have implemented services that go out and fetch service providers, service categories, right? Services themselves, frequently asked questions and service-related questions and whatnot and answers. So let's see how we would apply these concepts to the implementation that we have so far. So in our service, we might have functions such as these, right? We have find all services, find service by ID, find services for user. So you might have already implemented a few of these. Maybe Team 1 perhaps has implemented some of these functions. So notice here that we are using the new architecture in that we're going to have an interface declare all the functions, right? And we're going to provide a default implementation of that service, which is going to implement all the functions that were declared in the service in the interface, and actually use the repository to implement them, right? So notice that this class is called the default service, right? That implements the service, and it's using the service repository to implement the find service by ID, find all services, find services for user. Yes? It's implementing all of them and using the actual repository. What we want to do is sever this dependency, that it needs to go out to a database to fetch any of this. We want to sever that dependency. So to do that, here's a controller that depends on that service, and that service depends on the JPA repository. Here's a find service by ID using the service, find service by ID, which uses the repository. We want to be able to eliminate and say, this would go out to a database, but we don't want you to go out to a database. We want to be able to test these lines of code all by themselves without them going out to a database. So to do that, we're going to mock bean the service. We're going to mock it, and we're going to configure it and say that we're going to, if you're going to use the service to go find a particular service by ID, we have to build an object service, right? And say, well, this is a service you would get if you go out and actually fetch it. Okay? So let's build that object in a unit test. Here's a unit test. Let's build a service object. If you remember, a service object can be in any number of categories. Yes? One service can be in many categories, and one category can have many services. Yes? Right? So here we're going to build a couple of categories. We're going to say we're going to build a service. The service is going to be a web development service. And that web development service can be in two categories. Could be in a training category, like I'm doing. I'm teaching web development. Or it can be engineering, right? It can be outside and doing some actual work. So we're building two categories here, each one with its own unique identifier. We're building a list of service categories. There they are, and then I am populating. I'm populating the service. This new service. We're saying that these are their categories, right, for that particular service. We're then going to configure we're going to mock the service. We're going to say, if that controller tries to use this service to go and fetch a service whose ID is 345, they would get this web dev service object. Right? That's what they would get. Right? So here we're severing the dependency between the controller and the service, because that's the data they would actually get, so that we can test the controller all by itself without it going out to the repository. And here's a test. Right, we're going to go out and hit that controller with API services 345. We're going to expect that it comes back with a 200. We're going to verify that the ID of the JSON object that comes back has an ID of 345. We're going to verify that the field service categories, it's an array. It's an array of all the categories that this service is in. Right? We're going to check to see that the size of that array is 2. Right? It should have 2 categories in there. We're also going to check to see that those service categories, that's an array. I'm going to consider, so iterate over all the arrays, every array, extract a title, and that title should be either engineering or it should be training. Right? It's pretty powerful, right? That you can check to see that the output is what you were expecting, and verify it against an expected set of values. Okay? Awesome.